The cowboy was stunned by what he saw in the barn, until he realized the Apache, her intent clear. The wooden walls, worn by sun and wind, held the comfort of familiarity. Jake liked his routine. It made life predictable, steady, and simple. Some might have called it boring, but for Jake, it was perfect. He walked outside and inhaled the crisp morning air. The smell of hay, leather, and earth filled his senses. His horses were already stirring in the corral. They whinnied softly when they saw him approaching, eager for their morning oats. Jake smiled and patted the nearest horse, a strong bay named Dusty. "Morning, old friend," he said quietly. Dusty nudged his hand, as if answering him, and Jake chuckled. There was a peace in these small moments, a feeling that nothing in the world could disturb him here. After feeding the horses, Jake moved on to the cows. He checked the fences first, making sure there were no broken posts or holes where a cow could wander off. The land stretched far, with rolling hills and a few clusters of trees. In the distance, mountains rose proudly, their peaks still covered with snow from winter. Jake loved the sight, the reminder that life on a ranch was hard but beautiful. He worked from sunup to sundown, but he wouldn't have it any other way. By mid-morning, Jake had completed most of his chores. The sun was higher now, casting warm light across the fields. He paused to wipe sweat from his brow and leaned against the fence, looking at the barn. It was a sturdy old structure built by his father decades ago. The wood was weathered and the paint had faded, but it had character. Inside were the tools, hay, and animals that made up the heartbeat of his ranch. He had spent countless hours here, repairing, cleaning, and tending to the needs of the farm. That afternoon, after a long ride to check distant fences, Jake returned home. The sky was painted with golden hues, the sunlight soft and warm as it fell across the land. Everything seemed normal at first, yet something caught his eye. A soft glow came from the barn, unusual for this time of day. Jake frowned. He had been in and out of that barn hundreds of times, but he had never noticed such a light. It flickered gently, almost like candlelight, but he hadn't left any lights on. Curiosity crept into his mind. He walked slowly toward the barn, each step measured. There was a strange mix of caution and intrigue in his heart. His hand rested on the wooden door, feeling the rough texture beneath his fingers. The closer he got, the more he noticed small details, the way the light moved, shifting slightly as if responding to something inside. Jake paused at the entrance. The barn doors creaked softly as he pushed them open, a sound that echoed through the empty space. He expected to see the usual hay bales, the smell of animals, and maybe a few tools lying around. But what he saw made him freeze in place. The light wasn't coming from a lamp or lantern. It came from something or someone he didn't expect. In the center of the barn, among the hay, was a figure. At first he couldn't make out who it was. The person was calm, focused, moving with care and precision. Jake's heart beat faster. He wondered if someone had broken into the barn. He took a careful step closer, his boots making soft thuds against the wooden floor. The figure didn't notice him at first, which gave him a moment to study the scene. It was a young woman. Her dark hair framed her face, and her eyes were gentle but determined. She knelt beside a small calf that lay on the ground, its leg bent awkwardly. Jake's surprise grew. The calf had been fine that morning when he fed it, but now it seemed injured. The young woman's hands moved with knowledge and care. She wrapped the calf's leg with strips of cloth, speaking softly to it. Her voice was calm, almost like a whisper, yet filled with confidence. Jake stood there, unsure of what to do. Part of him wanted to yell, to demand an explanation. Another part wanted to step back and watch. The way she worked with the calf, so gentle and deliberate, made it clear she wasn't there to cause harm. She wasn't panicked or nervous. She had a purpose, and it was one of kindness. Memories of the few times he had seen her in town surfaced. Her name was Ailm. She was from a nearby Apache family. Jake had met her at the market and at the general store. She had always seemed quiet, respectful, and polite. He never expected to see her here alone in his barn. And yet she wasn't sneaky or secretive. She was helping, and that realization sank slowly into Jake's mind. He took another step closer, careful not to startle her. "Hey," he said softly, keeping his voice calm. The word seemed small, but it was enough to get her attention. She looked up, her dark eyes meeting his. There was no fear, no surprise, just a small nod acknowledging him. Jake felt a mix of emotions, surprise, curiosity, and admiration. He realized that she had walked a fine line, coming into the barn to help without drawing attention. It wasn't easy to trust strangers, and in this world kindness was not always expected. But Aeon had shown it, clearly and bravely, without asking for anything in return. He watched as she finished wrapping the calf's leg. She checked it once more, adjusting the cloth, and then gently patted the animal's head. The calf trembled slightly, but it was calmer now. Jake felt a warmth in his chest, an understanding of the quiet courage it took for someone to step forward in this way. For a long moment, neither spoke. The barn was filled with the soft rustle of hay and the gentle breathing of the calf. Jake felt a new respect forming inside him. Here was someone who acted without expectation, without fear, and with purpose. He realized that this small act of care held more meaning than many of the things he had witnessed in his long life on the ranch. Finally, he stepped fully into the barn, his presence now clear. Aeon nodded again, still calm, still focused on the calf. Jake took a deep breath, steadying himself. He knew that whatever he said next, it needed to be measured, respectful. "Do you need help?" he asked. Her eyes softened and she shook her head slightly. "Just a little," she replied. "If you don't mind showing me where I can find clean water for it, that would be helpful." He pointed to the corner where the water trough was kept, and together they guided the calf gently. Jake felt a quiet satisfaction in this cooperation, a reminder that life was full of unexpected lessons. As they worked, the sun continued to sink toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the barn. Jake felt a strange mix of gratitude and humility. He had learned something important today. Sometimes, people surprise you in the best ways. Sometimes, courage and kindness come quietly, without announcement, but with clarity of intent that speaks louder than words. By the time the calf was safely watered and settled among the hay, Jake realized he had been standing in the barn longer than he intended. The light that had first caught his eye was now fading, replaced by the soft glow of evening. He looked at Aeon, who had finished her work and was preparing to leave. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, two people connected by a small act of care that had grown into something meaningful. Jake felt that something in his world had shifted, that he had seen more than an injured animal. He had seen courage, skill, and the quiet strength of someone willing to help when it mattered most. After the calf was settled and drinking water, Jake stepped back to watch Aeon. She moved with quiet confidence, folding her small bundle of herbs and cloth carefully. Even in her simplicity, there was a sense of purpose in everything she did. Jake had seen many people come and go in his life, but there was something different about her. She seemed to carry both strength and gentleness in the same breath. He noticed how she paused for a moment, her gaze sweeping over the barn. She examined each corner, not with suspicion, but as if she were honoring the space. It struck Jake how respectful she was, even though this was technically his barn. Most people might not have cared, but she treated it as if it mattered, as if every place held a story. Jake felt a strange sense of admiration. "Do you do this often?" he asked, breaking the silence. "Helping injured animals." "Whenever I can," she said softly. "I can't ignore it when someone or something is hurt. It's not always easy, but it's the right thing to do." He thought about his own life, how many times he had turned away from small problems because they were inconvenient. Aeon's quiet bravery made him reconsider his own habits and choices. The barn was now filled with a peaceful stillness. Dust motes floated in the shafts of sunlight coming through the small gaps in the wooden walls. Outside, the sounds of the ranch continued, birds singing, cattle lowing, the distant wind through the hills. But inside, it felt like a world apart. Jake felt a calm settle over him, as if the barn had become a space where time moved differently. "You know," he said, trying to understand her better, I didn't expect to see anyone here. I thought the barn was empty." "I didn't expect to be here either," she admitted. "I just saw the calf and wanted to help. I didn't want to bother anyone and I didn't want to cause trouble." Together they set it on a bench near the wall. It wasn't much, just herbs and cloth, but it symbolized the care she had brought into this space. Jake studied her as she worked, wondering about her life. He had seen her in town, always quiet and polite, but here he could see a different side. She was brave, skilled, and thoughtful. She didn't need to prove herself. Her actions spoke louder than words. Jake felt a deep sense of respect growing inside him, the kind that comes from witnessing someone act with courage and integrity. "So," he said after a while, "where did you learn all this? You handle animals like a professional." "We've always cared for animals, for each other, and for the land. I watched my parents and grandparents and I learned what I could. It's not about being better than anyone else. It's about doing what's right." He had spent so many years focused on routines, on tasks, on survival, that he sometimes forgot the simple power of kindness. Watching Aeon reminded him why small actions mattered so much. They worked together for a while, checking the calf again and making sure its leg was comfortable. The calf seemed calmer with both of them near. Jake noticed how Aeon spoke softly, almost like she was singing to it, using gentle words and encouragement. He had never seen an animal respond with such trust so quickly. It made him wonder how many times he had been too busy to notice these little details, too distracted by his own work. "You're really good with them," Jake said, admiration in his voice. "Most people don't know how to handle animals like this." Respect, honesty, patience. These were qualities that mattered, and yet they were often forgotten in the rush of everyday chores and worries. Aeon's quiet example reminded him of something he had almost lost sight of. The sky outside was changing, turning orange and pink as the sun began its slow descent. Shadows stretched across the barn floor, but inside, time seemed to stand still. Jake felt a strange warmth, not just from the sunlight but from the presence of someone who carried integrity in every gesture. He realized that this encounter would stay with him long after the calf had healed and Aeon had gone. Aeon carefully gathered the leftover cloth and herbs, folding them neatly. "I should go soon," she said softly. "It's getting late, and I don't want to cause any trouble by staying too long." As she walked out, the last rays of sunlight caught her silhouette. She moved with quiet grace, each step deliberate and calm. Jake watched her go, feeling a sense of gratitude and admiration that was difficult to put into words. After she left, Jake returned to the barn. He checked the calf one last time, making sure it was comfortable. The young animal looked up at him with trusting eyes, and he felt a small but meaningful connection. This moment, simple as it was, had opened his heart to something new. He had witnessed courage, kindness, and integrity in action, and it had left a mark on him. Sitting on a bale of hay, Jake allowed himself to reflect. The day had started like any other, with chores, routine, and the usual quiet of ranch life. But in a single afternoon, he had seen an unexpected lesson unfold before him. Life had a way of surprising people, showing them truths they might not have noticed otherwise. And sometimes those lessons came from the most unlikely sources. Jake realized that Aeon's visit was more than just an act of helping a calf. It was a reminder that life was not only about work and survival, but also about connection, respect, and small acts of courage. He thought about the many people he had met in his life, some kind, some careless, and how each had left an impression. Aeon's quiet bravery, her clear intentions, and her skill had left the strongest impression yet. As the evening settled in, Jake felt a quiet peace. The barn, once just a place for tools and animals, now seemed like a place of learning and reflection. He understood that life had a way of teaching lessons in unexpected ways, and sometimes those lessons came from simple acts of kindness and courage. Jake closed the barn doors gently, ensuring they were latched. The sky outside was a deep purple now, the stars beginning to appear one by one. He walked back to his house, the soft crunch of dirt under his boots keeping rhythm with his thoughts. That night, as he lay in bed, he replayed the events over and over in his mind. He thought about Aeon, the calf, and the quiet courage that had entered his life unexpectedly. He drifted to sleep with a sense of gratitude and wonder. The day had started ordinary, but it had ended with a lesson that would stay with him forever. In the quiet of his ranch, under the vast New Mexico sky, Jake Turner had learned that courage and kindness could come quietly, but their impact could be profound and lasting. The next morning, Jake woke with a sense of curiosity he hadn't felt in years. The events of the previous evening replayed in his mind. Aeon's calm confidence, her gentle handling of the calf, and the clarity of her intent left a lasting impression. Jake had always thought he knew everything about his ranch, his animals, and even the people around him. But that afternoon had proven him wrong. Life had a way of surprising even the most experienced people, and Jake realized he was open to learning something new. After finishing his morning chores, he checked on the calf. It had spent the night in a cozy corner of the barn, wrapped in clean blankets and resting comfortably. The small animal had a bandaged leg, and Jake noticed that it seemed calmer than expected. Its breathing was steady, and it moved carefully, testing the leg without pain. Jake felt a quiet relief. Aeon's skill and knowledge had worked. He had seen many animals hurt over the years, and it was rare to witness recovery so quickly. As he stood there, he remembered the way Aeon had treated the barn and its occupants. She had shown respect not only to the calf, but also to him and the space he cared for so deeply. Jake thought about the people he had known in town, some helpful, some indifferent, and some careless. Aeon was different. Her intentions were clear, and her actions had proven it. In that moment, Jake decided he wanted to understand her better, not just as a person who helped a calf, but as someone who carried wisdom and courage. By late morning, Jake had completed most of his chores, leaving him a few hours to rest. The sun was high in the sky, warm and bright, and the ranch seemed calm and peaceful. Jake walked to the barn, thinking he might see Aeon again. Perhaps she had returned to check on the calf or simply wanted to continue helping. He wasn't sure, but he felt a sense of anticipation he hadn't experienced in a long time. When he opened the barn door, he was surprised to find Aeon already there. She was gently cleaning the small bandage, carefully inspecting the calf's leg. The animal seemed calm in her presence, trusting her completely. Jake approached quietly, not wanting to startle her. "Good morning," he said softly. Aeon looked up, her dark eyes meeting his. She smiled faintly, acknowledging him without words. "Good morning," she replied. Jake stepped closer and observed her carefully. The way she moved was deliberate, each action purposeful and precise. He noticed the soft confidence in her gestures, the calm patience that had allowed her to care for the calf so effectively. He wondered how she had learned such skill. "You really know what you're doing," Jake said. "I've seen a lot of people with animals, but few handle them with such care. It's not always easy, but it's worth it." As they worked together, Jake asked more about her life. Aeon spoke softly, sharing small details about her family, the lessons they had taught her, and the ways she had learned to care for animals. She spoke with humility, never boasting, but it was clear she carried a deep understanding of the world around her. Jake listened intently, fascinated by her perspective. He shared some of his own experiences as well. He spoke of his father and grandfather, the long days of work, the challenges of ranch life, and the small victories that made it worthwhile. Aeon listened carefully, nodding occasionally, her eyes attentive and thoughtful. In that simple exchange, they found a connection. It was a connection built not on words alone, but on shared values and mutual respect. By afternoon, Jake suggested they take the calf outside for a short walk. The barn had been safe and quiet, but he knew that movement and fresh air would help the animal heal. Aeon agreed, and together they guided the calf to a small paddock. The sun was bright, the grass soft beneath their feet, and the air carried the smell of earth and life. The calf walked carefully, testing its leg, but it seemed stronger with each step. Watching the calf, Jake noticed how Aeon encouraged it gently, using soft words and calm gestures. He realized that this was more than skill, it was empathy. She understood the animal's fear, its pain, and its needs. Jake had seen many people care for animals, but few did it with such understanding. He felt a deep respect for her, realizing that true care required patience, observation, and a willingness to put someone else's needs before your own. As they worked, a quiet bond grew between Jake and Aeon. They spoke less, letting their actions communicate what words could not. Jake noticed the way her presence brought calm to the ranch, the way her patience influenced not just the calf, but also him. He felt that he was learning something valuable, lessons not found in books, not in instructions, but in observing kindness, courage, and thoughtful action. After returning the calf to the barn, Jake sat on a bale of hay, taking a moment to rest. Aeon folded the remaining bandages and herbs neatly, placing them in a small bag. She moved with care as if every action mattered. Jake watched her, reflecting on the quiet strength she displayed. He realized that courage did not always roar. Sometimes it was quiet, gentle, and persistent. "You make it look easy," Jake said finally. Aeon shook her head, a small smile on her face. "It's not easy," she said. "It takes time, patience, and care, but it's worth it. Every life matters, even the smallest ones." But Aeon's actions reminded him of something more important: the value of compassion, the impact of quiet bravery, and the lessons learned by helping others. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the paddock, Jake felt a sense of gratitude. He had come to the barn expecting an ordinary day, but it had turned into a lesson he would never forget. He realized that people like Aeon, who acted with integrity and purpose, had the power to inspire and change those around them. Aeon looked at the calf one last time, making sure it was comfortable. She then turned to Jake. "I should go soon," she said softly. "It's getting late and I don't want to stay too long. Not just for helping the calf, but for showing me something important. I'll never forget it." She paused briefly, looking back at him, and in that small gesture he felt the weight of respect and connection between them. Once she left, Jake remained in the barn for a while, reflecting on the day. The calf lay quietly, its breathing steady and calm. The barn, once just a place of work and routine, now felt like a place of learning and reflection. He realized that life had a way of teaching important lessons through small, seemingly ordinary events. Jake walked back to his house as the first stars appeared in the sky. The air was cool and quiet, filled with the sounds of the ranch settling into the evening. He thought about Aeon, her actions, her words, and the clarity of her intent. In a world where motives were often unclear, she had acted with honesty, courage, and compassion. That realization stayed with him, filling him with a sense of awe and gratitude. That night, as Jake lay in bed, he replayed the events over and over. He thought about the calf, the barn, and the young woman who had entered his life so unexpectedly. He understood that sometimes, lessons come not from books or experience alone, but from witnessing integrity, empathy, and quiet courage in action. Jake drifted to sleep with a sense of peace, knowing that his perspective on life had shifted. The ranch, the animals, and even the quiet moments now felt richer, deeper, and more meaningful. He had learned that bravery and care often come quietly, without fanfare, but their impact is profound. In the days that followed, Jake found himself more observant, more patient, and more appreciative of small acts of kindness. He thought about how Aeon had shown him that life could be approached with respect, empathy, and calm courage. Her presence had been brief, but her impact was lasting. Over the next few days, Jake found himself thinking about Aeon more often than he expected. Her calm courage and clear intentions had left a mark on him. Life on the ranch was usually routine, with chores, animals, and long hours of work, but the memory of her visit made even the smallest tasks feel meaningful. He had always respected hard work, but now he realized that understanding and empathy mattered just as much. One morning, Jake decided to check on the calf again. It had been a few days since Aeon's visit, and he was curious about how it was healing. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The air was cool and fresh, and the ranch felt alive with the sounds of the early morning. Birds chirped from the trees, and the distant mountains glowed softly in the sunrise. As he approached the barn, he noticed the calf moving more confidently. Its leg, once injured and weak, now carried more weight, and it was exploring its small pen with curiosity. Jake smiled, feeling a sense of pride mixed with relief. The care Aeon had provided had clearly worked, and he understood that her knowledge had made a real difference. He knelt beside the calf, gently running his hand along its back. The animal nuzzled him softly, and Jake laughed quietly. It was a small moment, but it brought him joy in a way that words could not capture. Later that morning, Jake was surprised to see Aeon approaching the barn. She walked calmly, her steps measured and purposeful. She carried a small satchel, and her eyes held the same calm determination he had seen before. Jake felt a mixture of curiosity and anticipation. He had not expected to see her again so soon, but he welcomed her presence. "Good morning," Jake said, smiling. "Good morning," Aeon replied, returning his smile. "I thought I should check on the calf. How is it feeling?" She moved with the same deliberate patience he had seen before, checking the bandage and adjusting it slightly. "It's healing well," she said softly. "It just needs time and gentle care." He realized that her skill went beyond technique. It came from empathy, from genuinely caring about the well-being of another living being. Jake admired her quiet strength. As they worked together, Jake began to see more than just her skill with animals. He noticed how she carried herself, the way she listened, observed, and responded with thoughtfulness. Her presence was calming, not just for the calf, but for him as well. He felt a sense of ease he hadn't realized he was missing in his daily life. "You've taught me something important," Jake said quietly, after a few moments of silence. "I've worked with animals all my life, but I've never seen someone handle them with this much care and understanding." "It's not about teaching," she said softly. "It's about learning. Every animal, every person has something to teach if you listen. You just have to pay attention." He realized that he had spent so much time focused on routine and survival that he had forgotten to observe, to truly understand, and to appreciate the lessons around him. Aeon had reminded him of something important. Life was not just about work or survival, but also about respect, empathy, and connection. As the morning turned to afternoon, they continued their work, checking the calf and cleaning its pen. The barn felt alive with their presence, a place where learning and care intertwined. Jake noticed how Aeon treated each task with importance, no matter how small. It was a lesson in humility and dedication, showing him that meaningful action was often quiet and consistent, not loud or showy. After finishing their chores, they took a moment to sit outside the barn. The sun was warm, the sky clear, and the wind gentle. Jake offered Aeon a drink of water, and she accepted politely. They sat in companionable silence, watching the calves play in the nearby field and listening to the gentle sounds of the ranch. Jake felt a sense of connection growing between them, built not on words alone but on shared experiences and mutual respect. He realized that trust could be built in small moments, through observation, action, and care. Aeon had earned his trust not by talking about it, but by showing it through her deeds. "You know," Jake said after a while, "I never expected to learn so much from just helping a calf." He thought about the many challenges he had faced on the ranch, droughts, storms, difficult animals, and realized that he had often overlooked the small acts of care that could make life better for those around him. Aeon's example reminded him that courage and kindness were just as important as skill and strength. As the day continued, they worked together on other tasks around the barn. Jake showed Aeon some of his routines, while she shared tips on animal care and observation. They laughed quietly at small mistakes and celebrated the small successes. Each moment strengthened their understanding of one another and deepened the respect they had developed over the past few days. By late afternoon, the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the ranch. Jake noticed the calm in Aeon's eyes as she prepared to leave. She gathered her satchel, checked the calf one last time, and turned toward the barn door. "I should head back," she said softly. "It's getting late and I don't want to stay too long." "You've done more than just help the calf. You've reminded me of what really matters." Her presence had brought a new perspective to his life, showing him the importance of patience, care, and clear intentions. He realized that encounters like this, though brief, could have a lasting impact. Jake returned to the barn to check on the calf one last time before nightfall. The animal was resting comfortably, its breathing steady and calm. He felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that it was healing well, thanks to Aeon's care. The barn, once just a place of routine work, now felt like a space of learning, reflection, and growth. That evening, as Jake walked back to his house under the starry sky, he reflected on the past few days. Aeon had entered his life unexpectedly, and her actions had shown him the power of courage, empathy, and clear intent. He realized that life was full of lessons waiting to be learned, often in moments that seemed ordinary at first glance. Jake sat on his porch, looking out over the ranch. The gentle sounds of the night surrounded him, the rustle of leaves, the distant calls of animals, the soft wind across the fields. He thought about Aeon's words, her actions, and the clarity of her intentions. In a world where motives were often unclear, she had acted with honesty and purpose. That realization brought him a deep sense of peace and understanding. He knew that he would never forget these days. The calf, the barn, and the quiet lessons he had learned would remain with him for a lifetime. He understood now that courage and kindness did not always announce themselves. They often arrived quietly, through deliberate, thoughtful action. Jake went to bed that night with a sense of contentment. He felt richer, not in material terms, but in the depth of understanding he had gained. The ranch, the animals, and the quiet moments of life now held more meaning than ever before. He had learned that true strength came not just from hard work or experience, but from empathy, patience, and the willingness to act with clear and honest intent. The following morning, Jake woke earlier than usual, filled with a sense of purpose. The events of the past days weighed gently on his mind, leaving him reflective and aware. Life on the ranch had always been predictable, but now it felt richer. He had come to understand that even the smallest actions could leave a lasting impact. The memory of Aeon, the young Apache woman who had entered his barn to help a calf, was vivid in his thoughts. He realized how rare it was to meet someone whose intentions were so pure and clear. After completing his morning chores, Jake walked toward the barn. The calf had grown stronger with each passing day, and he wanted to check on it before the sun rose too high. The soft glow of early morning lit the barn's wooden walls, casting gentle shadows across the hay-strewn floor. The air smelled fresh, filled with the scent of hay, animals, and earth. As Jake approached, he noticed the calf standing confidently in its pen, testing its leg carefully. A sense of relief and joy filled his heart. It was healing well. Jake began preparing the barn for the day, cleaning, feeding the other animals, and organizing the tools. His movements were slower, deliberate, and thoughtful. He found himself remembering Aeon's gentle way of working, how she treated each task as important, and how she moved with care and purpose. Jake reflected on how much he had learned from her, not just about animals, but about patience, empathy, and the quiet strength of clear intentions. As he worked, he thought about reaching out to Aeon. Over the past days, he had developed a deep respect for her and felt a desire to express his gratitude properly. He remembered her words, that sometimes the smallest actions speak the loudest. Her visit had been brief, yet its impact on him was profound. He wanted to find a way to show that he had noticed her courage, skill, and kindness. Late that morning, he heard the familiar sound of soft footsteps approaching. Looking up, he saw Aeon walking toward the barn. She carried her satchel as always, and her calm, confident presence immediately brought a sense of peace to the space. Jake smiled warmly. "Good morning," he called out, his voice filled with genuine happiness. "Good morning," Aeon replied, returning his smile. She approached the calf and began inspecting its leg with her careful, practiced hands. "It's looking strong today," she said softly, her voice full of quiet satisfaction. Jake nodded. "It is. Your care has done wonders. I can't thank you enough for what you've done." "That's all." Each moment was filled with a sense of shared purpose. Jake noticed how Aeon's presence influenced not just the calf, but also him. He found himself moving more slowly, observing more carefully, and considering the impact of his actions. Her quiet example had taught him patience, reflection, and mindfulness. By midday, the calf was walking confidently, testing its leg without hesitation. Jake and Aeon stood together, watching the animal explore its pen. A sense of accomplishment filled the air, not just for the calf, but for the bond that had formed between the two humans through simple acts of care and attention. "You've changed how I see things," Jake said softly, breaking the silence. "I've spent years focusing on work and routine, but I realize now that there's more to life than chores and survival. Watching you has reminded me of that. That's all I've done." As the afternoon sun began to warm the ranch, Jake suggested taking the calf outside for some fresh air and gentle exercise. Aeon agreed, and together they guided the young animal to a small paddock. The calf walked carefully at first, then gradually grew more confident, exploring the open space. Jake noticed the joy in Aeon's eyes as she watched, a quiet pride in the success of their shared efforts. The two of them sat on a fallen log near the paddock, watching the calf move freely. The sun was warm on their faces, and the gentle breeze carried the scent of grass and earth. Jake felt a sense of connection he had rarely experienced before. It wasn't romantic or dramatic. It was the kind of deep respect and understanding that comes from witnessing integrity, courage, and purpose in action. "You know," Jake said after a while, "I think I understand now why people trust you so easily. It's not just skill, it's how you carry yourself. Your intentions are clear and that shows." "Clarity of intent is important," she said softly. "When you act with honesty and care, people and animals notice. It builds trust without words." He felt grateful for the lesson and knew it would stay with him forever. As the day turned to evening, Aeon prepared to leave. She gathered her satchel and checked the calf one last time. Jake stood nearby, watching her with respect and gratitude. "Thank you, Aeon," he said sincerely, "not just for helping the calf, but for reminding me of what really matters. I won't forget it." He understood now that courage, kindness, and clarity of purpose could leave an impact far greater than words or grand gestures ever could. After she left, Jake returned to the barn to check on the calf. The young animal lay quietly in its pen, now fully healed and confident. Jake felt a deep sense of satisfaction and gratitude. He had witnessed the power of care, patience, and integrity in action, and it had changed him in ways he could not have imagined. That evening, as the stars appeared in the sky, Jake sat on his porch, reflecting on the events of the past days. The ranch, the animals, and even the quiet moments of daily life now held more meaning than ever before. He understood that true strength came not just from experience or skill, but from empathy, respect, and the courage to act with clear intentions. Jake thought about Aeon, her humility, and her quiet bravery. He realized that people like her were rare, and that encounters with such individuals could leave a lasting impression on those lucky enough to witness them. Her actions had reminded him of the importance of clarity, kindness, and patience, lessons that could be applied not just on the ranch, but in every aspect of life. As the night deepened, Jake felt a sense of peace. He knew that life would continue with its routines and challenges, but he also knew that the lessons he had learned would guide him. He would approach his work, his animals, and his interactions with others with greater care and mindfulness. The simple act of helping a calf had become a profound lesson in courage, empathy, and respect. In the days that followed, Jake noticed subtle changes in himself. He moved with greater awareness, spoke with more thoughtfulness, and treated every task with renewed care. The ranch seemed brighter, the animals more responsive, and his own heart more open. Aeon's visit had sparked a transformation that went beyond the immediate situation. It had touched his perspective on life itself. He often thought about her, wondering what other lessons she might teach the world. Her clarity of purpose, her quiet bravery, and her deep empathy had shown him that even small actions done with care could ripple outward in meaningful ways. Jake understood now that life was filled with opportunities to act with kindness and courage, and that every act mattered, no matter how small. As he looked out over the ranch under the soft glow of moonlight, Jake felt gratitude. He had learned that sometimes the most profound lessons come from unexpected encounters, and that courage and kindness could be found in the simplest of actions. The barn, once a place of routine and work, had become a place of learning, reflection, and connection. Jake knew that he would never forget these days, the calf, or the young woman who had entered his life so unexpectedly. Her visit had left a lasting mark, reminding him that clarity of intent, empathy, and courage were the qualities that truly shaped life. And with that understanding, Jake felt ready to face the future with a renewed sense of purpose, patience, and appreciation for the small but meaningful moments that made life rich and full.